Welcome back, listeners, to the Nice to Meet You podcast. This is your host, your girl, Lynette. And I know our hearts are a little bit heavy today with the news of the passing of Chadwick Boseman. Man, it shocked me. I don't know if it shocked you all, but it shocked me. I was not expecting to hear that. I was sitting on my couch and my phone went off and it was like a news alert. And I'm like, what? Black Panther? Not Black Panther. And we know he's special to the Black community. He was like our first on the screen hero, and our hearts are hurting. I mean, on top of Kobe and all this craziness, and then like now it's just, and then John Lewis, and it's just so much hurt, so much pain going on in the world. And so I've been rocking with Chadwick Boseman since this TV series. I don't know, I'm dating myself. I don't know if you all know about this TV series called Lincoln Heights. It ran from 2007 to 2009. And he's also known for the movie 42, the story of Jackie Robinson and Marshall. And most recently, I don't know if you all saw this Netflix movie by Spike Lee, The Five Bloods. And so that's just a few of the things. And who knew? You know, I was reading an article and it said that he was battling stage 3 colon cancer, and then it moved up to stage 4. And it's a true testament of what kind of man he is and what he stood for. Like, I don't know if I was in his position, if I would be able to do that. And it also reminds us that we never know what the next person is going through. I was reading through some of the comments and how he would post like pictures of himself on Instagram, and how some people were being so mean, calling him like he's on crack. And I bet those people feel really bad right now. And they didn't know. I'm not punishing you all. I'm giving you some grace, but I'm just saying, it shows us that going forward, be nice to people, because you never know what the next person is going through. And Chadwick, you'll be missed because, like I said, you were our first superhero on big screen. We're sending prayers to your wife, your family, and your friends. And it's been a tough year, y'all, but we gonna make it through. Just keep leaning on God, keep leaning on one another. And so prayers up to his family. And so switching gears a little bit, the last episode was Dear Younger Me, and that was very powerful, wasn't it? It was, like I said, thank you again to all the people who share with me the things that they would tell their younger self. And if you missed that episode, go check it out. All right. So today's episode, this is season 1, episode 15, and I have a guest, the great Desmond he's the host of the Independent Thought podcast. So the Independent Thought podcast, it covers current political events, life, and everything in between. And so let's welcome, we're really nice over here, smiley and all that. Let's welcome Desmond to the Nice to Meet You podcast. And I want to thank you. Thank you for agreeing to sit down with me. And I know when we were discussing being on one another's show, I said that you were my ram in the bush. And he was like, what is that? I hope that's good. And so, yes, that's good. Because I had another guest set up for today and it fell through. And I thank you for sitting down and chatting with me today.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you having me on. I was going through Instagram and I found your page and I checked out your podcast and I listened to, the last episode that you did. And I was like, man, I think this is the kind of person I want to have on my podcast. So I was excited to reach out to you. So I'm excited to be on the show.
Thank you. Before we go into the show, how do you feel about, Chadwick Boseman? Were you into the Marvel? Were you into him as an actor? How did you feel about it when you heard about it?
All right. Well, I ain't gonna go on to too long of a rant here, but if just being honest right now, I got like a little shelf out there in the hallway. It got all 23 of the MCU Marvel movies on it. 'Cause
Wow.
I'm one of those people. So yeah, I'm really into the Marvel movies. And but I would never go to the movies though. Like I was one of those weird people. I would wait till the movie would come out and then I'd buy the movie. But so like I know it sounds weird, but I hadn't been to the movies in like 4 years
Okay.
until like 2018. And the first movie I went to the movies to see after not going to the movies for 4 years was Black Panther. I went to the movies, saw Black Panther. Um, Man, I couldn't get over the story of Wakanda, like, because I didn't know too much about it because I hadn't seen the comics before. I never read the comics. I'm not a real big comic reader. I like to watch things, but yeah, the story was great. I love the story of like the five tribes and how they all came together underneath the one king. And, I think that's just a powerful story because, like too often, I know like growing up here in the US, like we don't really get told a whole lot about African history. Like I know that that's fictional, but still it was just
Yeah.
like, it was nice to see like representation about, like the culture that wasn't just rooted in just like America, you know? And so, like, I think that's just a big deal for kids growing up now. They can just hear more about Black people than just like we used to be slaves.
Yes. I'm glad you brought that out. Boy, it's and like I said, I'm still in shock, and I'm sure a lot of you all are. So Desmond, can you tell the listeners a little bit about yourself? So things like where are you from? How did you get into podcasting? And so besides, I know you like politics and like current
Yeah.
events. Besides that, like what are your other passions?
Yeah. So, I mean, I grew up like right outside of Philly. I was born and raised like right in between like Philly and like Camden, New Jersey. So like my dad lived in Pennsylvania. My mom lived in Jersey, so I got to like hop back and forth between those two worlds a lot. And when I was like in high school, I moved out to Montana, and I've been in Montana since I was in high school, and that was a crazy just like culture shock, just moving from the one of the biggest cities in the country to the middle of nowhere. So um yeah, it had a pretty big impact on my life, just like the way I would see the world, because I went from like urban area to the rural area. So I got to like understand kind of like how both sides of the coin work really. But as far as podcasting is concerned, like I remember I got a friend who lives out in Seattle now. He used to live out here in Montana, but now he lives in Seattle. Him and I would always talk on the phone, like about politics. And like one of the times I was like, hey, you know what? We should just start recording these conversations, man.
Okay.
Like somebody else got to hear what we're saying. And then, I made the podcast and I made it with the intention that it would be like mine and his. But after a while, he didn't really seem that interested in it. So I was like, I'm going to just do it myself,
All
man.
right, right.
Yeah, so I kind of just picked up the torch, and I think I'm still learning how to be a podcast host. Like there's still like the podcast itself isn't like great yet, but I think I'm slightly improving as time goes on. I'm hoping that maybe like a year from now it'll be like something really good. But we tweaking it as we go along.
No, I mean Desmond is being modest, y'all. Desmond has he has his whole setup where he has the music. He has a theme song. He has all this stuff going on, and we'll get into like where you can like contact him, where you can listen to his podcast. And he's being humble right now. Desmond has it going on, and so
Hey, I'm always looking for ways to improve, I mean, like I want to feel like it's really professional, and then I'll drop the modesty a little bit. But we ain't there yet. We ain't there yet.
the Mamba mentality, and that's what we're all about, trying to be better and improve ourselves. So I ain't mad at that. I ain't mad at that at all. And so besides that, besides like podcasting and politics, and
Yeah.
what are your other passions?
Well, when I first moved out here to the town I'm at now, I was going to school out here at the University of Montana, and I was studying psychology. And I was studying that because I was always interested in trying to like just to help people be better, So I've since I like got done with school, I've tried to, like do a lot of like digital like media marketing, especially on social media, trying to help like small businesses like just reach bigger audiences here in this area. And so I just that's like one of my passions is just like trying to find like ways to help people. And like sometimes that's just like personally, sometimes that's like helping people grow their business. But just those are the kind of things I'm really into. But besides that, I'm a big like sports like junkie. I mean, I like breathe ESPN. So I mean, and just being from the Philly area, like I already got like my four teams for all the four sports picked out. Like Sixers
What's up
fan,
with those
Eagles
six?
fan.
Those Sixers are whack. I'm sorry. I mean, don't
Yeah, you know
don't.
what? I don't know who to blame for that one, but let me just go on a side note real quick. Here's what really messed up. They messed up last year because last year they had a good team. They 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 messed up and gave Tobias Harris Jimmy Butler's contract. That's what they did wrong. They should have gave that contract they gave Tobias Harris. They should have gave it to Jimmy Butler, and they should have gave Al Horford's contract to Tobias Harris, and then just not sign Horford. Should have kept JJ Redick. We just kept the team.
Yeah, yeah,
Y'all messing around. We had a good team. We came one shot away from beating like the Raptors, and they won the title. Like, come on now. How you gonna
yeah.
break up the team after that? That's just dumb.
I don't know. And then Joel Embiid, he's a meme. The crying face. He kind of replaced Jordan
He
for a little
needed
while.
Jimmy Butler to be there because Jimmy Butler kept him in line. Because Jimmy
Yeah.
Butler wasn't afraid to get in his face and be like, "You messing up right now."
Jimmy buckets don't play, and I'm looking forward to like the playoffs. And we'll get into a little bit about basketball. I'll ask you about the protest and how you feel about that in a little bit.
Yeah,
But yeah, let's get into it. And so the Nice to Meet You podcast, we're gonna take a little detour a little bit because typically we talk about becoming the best version of ourselves and self help and things like that. And so today, with all the things going on in America, I decided to talk about race in America. And so you all know, just recently, Jacob Blake was shot 7 times in the back by a police officer in Kenosha, Wisconsin. It's a miracle. I just thought I was going to hear on the news that he passed away. It's a miracle that he survived. And, the last I heard, he was paralyzed from the waist down, and the doctors don't know if it's permanent. And so I don't want us as a community of people to become numb to this because it's becoming a constant headline in the news, and I don't want us to become numb to it. So I kind of wanted to, focus on that conversation today. And so we'll continue to pray for him and his family and that he continues to pull through. And so Desmond,
yeah.
all right, so what are your thoughts on the recent shooting of Jacob Blake, the killings of people like Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and George Floyd?
What was the second name?
Uh,
No, Ahmaud Arbery. Yeah.
yeah,
Um, I have different feelings about all of them. I mean, I feel like, it's one thing to like look at it as a whole, like, just like the police like real brutality of like three of the four, because obviously Ahmaud was shot by not by police. Um, but it's just one of those things where like I feel like each individual situation has like a different context to it, because on the Ahmaud Arbery side, like obviously like racism plays a part in there, not just because he got shot, but because the police didn't even think to prosecute until it became a national story, like what, 2 3 months later, like
yeah.
once it finally got picked up by social media, and then they were like, oh, I guess we'll prosecute now, you know or with Breonna Taylor, with those no knock warrants, how you could kill somebody in their sleep and still face no like retribution for it. Like the district attorney in Louisville still like has not brought any charges. As far as I'm concerned, they probably ain't going to,
I don't
because
think so
if
either.
they face this much heat and they didn't even make a public statement about it, like that's just like trying to like just that they basically just spit in the face of everybody. They're like, listen, not only do we not hear you, we don't care. And when it comes to George Floyd, I mean, that's the only one where justice was kind of served, but literally the whole country had to be on fire for that to happen. I
Yes.
mean, like you had, I think the thing about George Floyd, I'll end with Jacob Blake here, but the thing with George Floyd was that gave me a little bit of hope, because there were protests happening in all 50 states. And for those who like don't know like the statistics, I mean black people are I think like, we are like what, 12 13% of the
Yeah.
population.
Yeah, it's about 13.
Yeah, and so when you have protests in all 50 states, that means you had white people protesting like predominantly all over the country. And that, unfortunately, I hate to say it like it is, but like that is what we need in order for this to move forward, because that's what this movement's been missing for all these decades, for the
Yes.
century and a half, is just like it's just like the just apathy of white people where they just don't care. But like we need them to care about this, or else things aren't going to change, because the people who are preventing change are preventing it, because they're like, well, nobody else seems to care but them. So but now we finally feel like we have like a movement on our side here. But what comes with Jacob Blake, you know, let me just say this with Jacob Blake. I feel really torn about the Jacob Blake thing because I don't think the man should have been shot at all. But at the same time, like I just feel like like it doesn't like look good, when the man was like walking away from the cops like that with guns being drawn at him. Like I don't think anyone should ever be shot like that. But I know like me personally, if someone pointed a gun at me, like I wouldn't be walking away. Like I would freeze. Like, but there's no reason to say the cops wouldn't have shot him anyway. They still shouldn't have shot him. But I live in like, like I was saying before, I live in Montana right now. And before that, I lived like, right outside of Philly. And like, I lived in like both like purple areas where I lived in like places where like you got like, Republicans and Democrats. And so like, I hear like both sides of the story here. And a lot of things I hear from like Republicans, they're like, the dude shouldn't have been walking away from him like that. Like they don't
Yeah,
know
they
what he
hear
was
that.
reaching for in the car, this, that, and the other. And I'm like, yeah, I hear you on that one, but I don't think you deserve to like shoot someone 7 times in the back
Yes, that's
because of it. I mean,
excessive.
they could have shot him in the leg. They could have tased him. Like, like I understand like maybe they were afraid for a second, but they didn't have to go from like, I don't know what you're doing to you need to die. Because when you shoot someone 7 times in the back, you're not shooting them 7 times with the intention of them living.
Well, can I ask you this? So it was more of them than him. So I
Yes.
guess the question I have is why weren't they able to stop him before he got to the car?
You know what? I don't know. I don't know. And this is the thing where it's like I don't know if it's like a lack of training on the police's part or if it's like they don't care. Like I feel like it's hard to know because I mean I've met some good cops in my life. I mean I'm related to some cops. So I mean like it's hard to know because I mean like some cops are out there and they're truly trying to like be good and then other cops are out there just thinking like, oh, if you don't listen to me, I'm just gonna kill you. And I know I can get away with it. And it's hard to know who's who. You never know which cop you're talking to. I think that's the scary part because like we don't really know which cops are out there like with our best intentions in mind, and that's part of the change that needs to come through. Is that like when some of these bad cops do what they do, they need to be held accountable. And I think
Yes.
that's the real problem in our system is that these cops have this giant shield around them where they have this license to kill people and they never go to jail. Meanwhile, people going to jail in like the state of Texas for voting. That woman who went to jail for 3 years because she voted when she wasn't allowed to vote. She goes to jail, but people get to kill people for no reason and they don't even get charged. Not go to jail, they don't even get charged. Like that's the real issue going on here.
Well, you saying that it makes me think of the look that was on is it Derek Chauvin? Is I'm pronouncing this right? The officer that had his knee on George Floyd's neck and how he
I never even took the time to learn his
I
name, so
think
I
I
did.
did.
What?
Yeah, I
It
know.
didn't matter.
Yeah, I know. It's like he's not important, but like the look, like listening to you talk, the look that he had on his face is like nothing's gonna happen to me. He had his hand in his pocket, like he has his hand in his pocket, like he's posing for a picture, looking directly in the camera. So yeah, and I agree with you. Like not even just all 50 states. This was like internationally. Like
Right.
internationally, people were like protesting, and I feel like change is it's got to come like the next generation. The younger people seem to have it together more than the older generation, and hopefully change comes soon. And so this leads me to the question of like the NBA fans and how they protest like that threw me for a loop when I kind of heard what is his name he was talking about we shouldn't be George Hill. He was
George
saying
Hill,
that
yeah.
yeah that he doesn't even think that they should be inside this bubble with them with the things that are going on. And so I heard like rumblings of them kind of maybe going like wanting to protest the game and boycott the game. I mean, so they did that. And so how do you feel about like the Milwaukee Bucks like leading the charge and then the domino effect of like athletes in baseball and then Naomi Osaka and then like even the soccer players? Like, how do you feel about that?
Well, two feelings here. First, I thought it was the right move to do by the Bucks. I mean, especially with it being in your community, like you're just trying to bring awareness. That's the whole point of a protest, trying to bring awareness to a situation. And I thought that the Bucks did a good job because I feel like this story had the potential to just skate underneath the radar, but because everyone understands just how powerful sports are in America, when a sports team refuses to play sports, a bunch of people lose their entertainment and then they're forced to know why. and then you amplify the situation a lot more than it would have been otherwise. And the other teams, I felt like, it's hard to know if someone is doing something in solidarity or they're doing it because they don't want to be the person who didn't do it.
Yeah.
But either way, it doesn't. I don't think it was a negative thing. It was definitely a positive thing. Now, as far as like, like seeing like Naomi Osaka doing that, and like the baseball teams, and even the NHL did it yesterday, and like I think these are all positive things. I feel like the more light that gets shined on these things, the better. And I was afraid, like after like, like a month or so ago, like once the protests from George Floyd like really died out, I was like, okay, that was the moment we had for 2020. It might be another few years before another like,
Right.
before another like something happens before people start caring again. But I'm glad that people are coming right back to it and saying like, no, we haven't stopped caring. So that's a really big deal. On the other hand, though, like George Hill was talking about how they were like, "Oh, we shouldn't be playing basketball right now. Like we should just cancel the season." Like I thought that was a dumb move.
Why you
Like
say
I
that?
don't, because if the goal is to have a spotlight, if the goal is to have a platform to which you can bring about change, why would you take away your biggest platform?
Yeah, I
Why
agree
would
with
you
that.
why would you jump off a huge platform to a smaller platform? Like when you just making noise on Twitter or you just making noise in the community, like I mean, like you'll get some headlines, but it'll never be as big as it would from that bubble in Orlando where the whole world's watching you play basketball. And then as soon as the game's over, they're like, "What do you have to say about the game?" And then they can be like, "Justice for Breonna Taylor." Like, like when LeBron does that, like all the eyes are on him. So like don't take away your biggest platform. Just don't do that to yourself. Like there'll be time after the season's over to get in the community. Like take the time now when you get the most eyes on you to tell the world what's really going on.
And I agree with that. I know I read where some people in the black community were like, man, they punked out. They punked out because don't do it a little bit and then go back and say, you know what? They started thinking about their money and started thinking about, so this is someone was saying, I saw on social media, it's like, you did it and now you're backtracking. How do you feel about that? Do you feel like they like punked out?
No, I mean, like, what's the real goal here? Like, I mean, I feel like it shouldn't be about your pride. You know what I'm saying? Because, like, when you, like, a statement like that to me, and it's probably like, this is the psychology coming out of me, right? Like, when I hear a statement like that, that sounds like pride to me. Like, oh, well, I did something, so now I have to stand by it. That's just pride.
Yeah.
Like, don't make decisions based on pride. Make decisions based on goals. Like, what is the goal here? Okay. If the goal is to amplify your voice, then stay where you have the most power.
And I feel like too, like the emotions, you know, sometimes we make decisions off of impulse. And I feel like the emotions were high and they thought at the time, this is what, you know, I need to do. I need to walk out. And so after they got time to calm down and think about it, they were like, they found out, like you said, Desmond, that this is the best place for me to use my voice. And I'm not mad at them for that. I don't feel like they punked out. And so thinking about that and thinking about all the injustices that are going on in the Black community, how do you feel how America has responded as a whole, like over the past few years?
Um, that's a hard question to answer. I mean, like, how has America responded, like, from like where it was to where it is now?
Yeah, so you so I'll say as far as like, is it just like recently? So the George Floyd thing, like we came together and we started protesting, but we go back to it. Like we, for the moment, it's fresh in our minds, and then we go back to what we're doing. Then another one happens, and another one happens. Do you feel like we're taking two steps forward? I mean, one step forward and two steps back, or we constantly like going towards like we're getting a plan in place? Like somebody is recognizing that, hey, Black people are really being like this is really happening. They're not just saying Black Lives Matter. There are really real issues. They're not just saying things just to be saying them. Do you feel like America is finally listening?
Uh, yes and no. I mean, so I feel like this is one of those things where it's like, I think if you are looking for the answer to be as quick as your Google search, then you in the wrong place. Um, because let's just be real for a second. I mean, if you go back to like the 1960s, right? When when we had the civil rights like movement. In 1968, the same year that Martin Luther King Jr. was killed and Malcolm X was killed, that was the year that it became legal for black people to marry white people. So, and then, you fast forward like maybe like 20 years, like 25 years into the 90s, and that was probably the first time that white people knew it was a bad thing to say the N word. Like that was like that's when they finally like it was when it finally hit them, like, oh, maybe I shouldn't say that word. And like it wasn't until about like 15 years ago that white people actually allowed themselves to listen to hip hop music.
Well, they
You
were
know,
stealing it all the time. Sorry, I didn't say that, but
uh,
but they
right.
were sampling it anyway.
Yeah. And so I mean like I feel like change has escalated a little bit more quickly the last like couple years. I know I live in a really like liberal area, like I was saying before, and I know that like the way people feel about race issues here has changed a lot. And this is a community full of like mostly white people, but like their feelings about racism have like dramatically shifted in this area just in the last 5 years. So I feel like change is happening. It's just like if there was like a spot from like where we want to be and where we are, that spot is still huge, but it is moving. And, like, it might not get there in the next 10 years. It might not even get there in our lifetime, but like I feel like we are making progress on what the last generation left us. And if we continue to move towards this change, it'll keep moving towards that. We just can't like get complacent with wanting change and demanding change.
And I will agree. I think you said this a few minutes ago about how we're seeing more white people out protesting. And I feel like that sometimes you need to see people that, because you probably look at us and say, they're always whining about something. And so when you start to see other people of different cultures and different races and backgrounds, maybe people will be like, yeah, this is a serious issue. So I agree with you. And so it makes me think too about, so the current president, he said that he has done more for black people, the black community, than any other president besides Abraham Lincoln. So how do you feel about that statement?
Ah, man. Why'd you have to ask me that question? So Trump, the answer is no. Trump is a person who, as we all know right now, will say and do literally anything in order to seem popular. He will say anything. Um, the problem with trying to dispute what he said is the fact that most presidents haven't done anything for black people. So
Facts.
I
Facts.
mean, like we can sit here and talk about like what did like Clinton do? Nothing. Like what did Bush do? Even less. What did Obama do? I mean, he was there. He was
He
there
was
for
black,
sure.
yeah, but
Yeah, he was
yeah,
there, but like honestly, like just keeping it real, like what did he like what in policy did he do? Like did he like address the police issue at all while he was in office? No. Did he
no,
adjust, address criminal like, justice reform? No. Did he try to like go into the black community and try to like uplift like black businesses, like making it easier for people to get loans, making it easier for people to buy houses? Like, did any of that happen while he was in office? No. I mean, like, so the bar is super low because like I feel like presidents just haven't really cared, you know? But to answer your question simply, Trump is a clown. Don't believe a word he says.
I love that. No, it's like I feel like I said on your podcast, and I'll leave the description, the link to the when I was on his podcast in the episode description. So when I was on a Desmond's podcast, I was thinking about, oh, I just lost my train of thought. But with the president, oh yeah, how we're I feel like we've been in a reality show, and Obama and Michelle, so Barack Obama and Michelle kind of brought that out in the Democratic convention, and I feel
Yeah.
like, yeah, he's just like, you're fired, and this is like real people. This is a real life. This is not a game show. So, and I agree with you saying that he's a clown, and so it kind of leads me to like Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, and
Yeah.
how confident you feel like they will, improve, things for the black community.
I'm not. I'm not. I'm just being real. Like I feel like in my like definition of what's happening here right now is that there are like little like micro things that'll happen underneath like a Biden Harris administration. Like they'll probably push for like higher minimum wages, which is like something that like when they have done that across the country, I know some people think that that's a dumb idea, but where they have done that across the country in like places like Denver and Seattle, New York City, like it actually has improved the lives of people who are in poverty in those areas. Even though like there has been some inflation with that. When it comes to like just like education like factors, I feel like, Biden Harris will definitely, be like they'll try to like help improve like, like secondary education as far as like primary education around the country. I mean, they're going to tackle criminal justice reform. Like they're going to do some really basic things that aren't going to be like a huge help to the community, but they will be a help. If Trump stays in office, none of those things will happen, and he'll probably actually cut funding for a lot of those things. You know what I'm saying? So like that's where I see things. Like I don't see Joe Biden or Kamala Harris as like the champions that we need. I see them as like the the they're like the middle ground, obviously. Like I want someone better to be there, but they're definitely better than what it could be if we don't find a way to stop Trump. And that's why I'm always preaching to people that they need to get out and vote, because I know too many people out there who just don't vote. And I'm like, come on, like just do it for the rest of us. Like please get out there, like get a ID if you have to, go register, like just like do whatever you got to do. Like I'll tll you what you have to do. Like I'll send you the form. Like let's just get this done.
Well, I feel like if you don't think your vote matters, look at 2016. They said I think only 60% of America voted, and that's really low to me. And I feel
Yeah,
like
let me
that.
put that in a different perspective for you real quick. I'm sorry to cut you
No,
off.
you're okay.
100 million people didn't vote.
Wow.
100 million people didn't vote that could have voted. Like that is a crazy number, y'all. That like there's 200 like countries in the world right now, right? There's only like 10 of them that even have 100 million people. Okay, there's only 10 out of 200 that have 100 million people, and we had 100 million people in this country who didn't vote. Like come on now, like that is just crazy to me. I know that Hillary versus Trump doesn't excite anybody, but like we can't stay on the sidelines this time. Okay, you just can't do it.
Yeah, and it's like the in politics, I mean, they all lie. I feel like we have to just vote for the lesser evil. And sometimes it's hard to decipher, but I mean, who is not better than Trump? I don't know. I mean, there are people that at this point, I mean, shoot, I could be the president. I feel like I could do better. Desmond, you could be the president. I feel like we could do better. So get out and vote, like Desmond said. And thank you for bringing out those numbers. Like this dude, like check out his podcast. Like he knows what he's talking about. Like I couldn't even throw those numbers out. And so in the black community, we all know we have to sit down and have that conversation. The talk is called the talk, and for all of you out there that don't know like what the talk is when black parents sit down with their kids and they tell them how to respond around law enforcement, and so that they can make it back home safely. And we know, as we see in the past few days, that they could possibly do everything right and still not make it home safely. But you have to have the talk in the black community with your kids. And so, Desmond, do you think that it's time that white parents, they see all this stuff that is going on around in America? Do you think it's time for white parents to sit down and have a conversation regarding racism to improve race relations with their kids?
I think they are in some places. I mean, like just being in a predominantly white community right now. I mean, I feel like before it felt like there was like how black people approach racism and how white people approach racism. But now I feel like this might have been the biggest thing that came out of Obama's presidency. I feel like now racism went from a black white issue to like a liberal conservative issue. And now it's like liberal white people, like they feel like they are, or at least a lot of them do, at least when I talk to these people, when I hear from these people, they feel like they want to be allies to the communities of color. And so they are a lot more like, they're a lot more thoughtful about all these things than they would have been before. So now I feel like liberal white people are really on board with trying to be better people, whereas like conservative white people see this as like, like same old, same old. So they're the ones who are still like the hold up here, I guess you would say.
Like the
You know,
Karens?
not just, I mean, yes, but like also just like like I cannot overstate how much of a problem Fox News is. Like on some real, Fox News is the biggest like propaganda network in the world, I feel like. And they are in the living rooms of millions of people all over this country, and all they do is try to talk about how this is like a race war being started by the Democrats, and how like racism doesn't actually exist in America, and how, like it's just the Democrats trying to use this as like a tool to take down Trump, and that black people are doing just fine under Trump. And these are the things that they say on Fox News, and almost everybody on the right listens to this stuff. And so when they hear black people talk about racism, they're just like, you're just trying to hurt my president. That's all this is. That's all
Yeah.
this is. So like we're not there yet. We're not there yet, but we're making progress. I like the fact that like so many white people have become like, as they would call it, allies, as I would like to call it, like thank you for finally like opening your damn eyes. Like, why did it take you this many years? But I'm glad you're here now.
I agree. I had a few friends reach out to me, and I shouts out to the friends, you know who you are, and how they reached out and just said, "What can I do?" And like they started like seeking out different, and it's like it's not up to you, so don't feel obligated as a black community to, and to give them knowledge on race and how things should be handled. There's books and things that they can do, so don't feel obligated. But I appreciate those friends that reached out and said like, "What can I do?" Like how you're feeling, just showing that you care. Like you said, just showing that you care and that you understand the struggle, and to use your privilege to help the your sister, your brother out. And so Desmond, so I know that you're biracial, I believe,
Yeah.
black and white, right?
Yes. My
And
my mom was black. My dad's white.
okay, so can you tell? So I really wanted to get to this question because I don't think some people understand the struggles of a biracial child in America. I believe anywhere. And so, can you tell like how it was growing up? Like, did the black community accept you? Did the white community accept you? Or what was your experience growing up biracial?
It's a deep topic for me. I'm gonna try to I'm
No,
trying
go
to keep
ahead.
it
Go ahead.
personal. I'm trying to keep it like real, like concise, because it's personal subject for me. But I haven't talked about this probably that much with, maybe like besides like three or four people who know me really well. But it it was something that really like kind of like messed me up as a kid, because I lived like 20 minutes outside of Philly. So I was in the suburbs where like we was like real close to Philly. Like you could get there like real easy, right? And so like I lived in the suburbs with my dad during like the week, and then I would go to Jersey in the city in Trenton, and then she lived in Camden and Burlington for a while. And I spent like the weekends with her. So like I spent like half the time like with my white side of the family, and then half the time with my black side of the family. And so like growing up, I never knew who I was supposed to be. Was I was supposed to be this like a kid like trying to be more white, or was I a kid trying to be more black? And like when I was with my white side of the family, like it was apparent, like like they all accepted me. But when I was with like white friends, like they just saw me as a black person. They didn't see me as a white person. And when I would hang out with my black friends in Jersey, like because I was light skinned, they would call me white. Like,
Yeah.
and not only that, but I lived in the suburbs sometimes. So they was like, oh, you just white, like look how you talk, look how you dress, just like this, that, and the other. Like it doesn't matter that you come on here on the weekends, but you're a weekend black person, like
That's terrible. That's
and
terrible.
like yeah, and so like it was one of those things where it was like, I was trying to like, as I was like growing up, like, a lot of, I was like black kids, they would just see me as like, just like not black enough. And then when I would hang out with certain white people, like they weren't afraid to call me the M word, like they weren't afraid to, just like whip it out and just like throw it in my face all the time. Like, I didn't know if I should say it on your show or not, but like, you know, I mean, white people never saw me as half black. They just like, if they didn't like black people, they weren't afraid to call me names. You know what I'm saying? So like, there was a long time where I felt like I just didn't fit in anywhere. I was like, I don't belong to a group. Like no group actually wants me. And then, you know, it took me a while until I got older, until I just realized I just hung out with some shitty people. I'm sorry for
No,
cursing.
you're good.
Um, yeah, I just hung out with some bad people just growing up. So, it took me a while kind of just like to find my own identity. I think there was a one just a hip hop artist that I listened to. I say hip hop and not rap because that's how I feel about the differentiation between his music and other music. But dude by the name Lupe Fiasco, and I remember listening to his music, and I think one of the songs he had, he was talking about like how he didn't have to represent, separate cultures because he found a way to merge it within himself. And so that's what I kind of just like tried to do as time went on. I just started trying to learn how to like not try to pick a side, but just like be okay with just being both and just like learning to be okay with that.
Have you looked at the show Mixedish? Your story kind of sounds like from like Bo. Have you looked at that show?
I've seen it. I haven't watched it.
Okay, well, they kind of talk about that. I think people don't realize the struggle. So listen to your story, and thank you for sharing that. Thank you for being vulnerable and sharing your story with us. And I think that so, given the fact that you went through what you went through, would you want to raise a biracial child? I mean, well, how are you apprehensive about bringing a child into this world to maybe have to possibly go through the struggles that you went through?
No, because I feel like what I went through will only the child will still have issues, but they won't be the issues that I had because I grew up in like the 90s and the early 2000s. I'm 30 years old for people wondering how old I am. um, and growing up like being like mixed race in America at that time will be harder than it would be if I were to have a child right now and them like growing up like 10 years from now. I feel like as our society keeps getting better, it'll keep getting easier. It might never be perfect. I think it could be eventually, not like perfect, but like the place where like racism's like thought of the same way that people think of Nazis. You know what I mean? Like, like just a relic of the past, but we ain't there yet. But I feel like we can get there. And I feel like the country is moving in that direction. So no, I would not be afraid. I mean, like, will it be dangerous for that child? I mean, yeah, depending on where you live, it can be. I mean, definitely. I mean, but I feel like we can't be scared to be ourselves. We cannot let these people who want to like keep us down, like just, keep us from living our lives because if we do that, then they win.
You're speaking big facts, and that's what we're about. I'm glad you said about becoming the best version and being accepting yourself for who you are. And I appreciate you for just your vulnerability and just how you speak about that. And I want to kind of just real quick and say, in the Black community, colorism is still an issue. I know back in my grandmother's day, the paper bag thing that they do, the comb test where they put the comb through your hair and if it goes through. And I mean, people probably are not doing that, today, but people are still saying that, you're the house slave or you would be out in the fields. And so Desmond kind of shared his experience. So please, the Black community, let's just love one another. We come in all beautiful shapes and sizes and shades of color, and so just love each other. And so, okay, so now Desmond, like the Black community is exhausted. I know I'm exhausted with all the things that are going on in 2020. And so, what message of inspiration would you like to offer? Just speaking specifically to the Black community, what type of inspiration would you like to offer them?
There has never been a moment in history where our voices have been stronger than it is currently. And a lot of that's because the political environment that we're in, with things have happened recently, like I was saying before, with like people finally getting on our side, but also, just like this is actually the strongest that any person who's poor's version has been like in an entirety of like our existence due to social media, you know with Facebook and Twitter and all and YouTube even like becoming like what they are right now. Like anybody can pick up a camera or a microphone and just talk and have the chance for their voices to be heard. And so we are now living in an era where if you feel as though that your voice or your message isn't getting out there, you can go and just put it out there and get people to listen and connect with the community and talk to people. And I feel as though we are now coming to a point right now where, like things will only continue to get better. I know they're still bad. I know that there's a lot of work that needs to be done, but we are on the upward path right now. I feel like people just got to keep digging. They got to keep, working. But we have all the means to finally like get to where we need to be. Like the ultimate goal, as far as I'm concerned, is equality. What Dr. King, like really stood for. And I feel like we have a chance to get there now by just continuing to try to amplify ourselves. And we can do that by just continuing to show up and continuing to talk about these issues whenever they come up. And as long as we keep doing that and keep working and just keep being humble and respecting each other, we can't tear each other down. Like then we'll finally get to a better place.
And I agree with that. Like me and you, we're doing a podcast. We're making sure our voices are heard. And like you said, maybe back in 80s, 90s, probably even early 2000s, you know, as it is today, like everybody, there are places like there's no excuse. I'll say that if you want your voice heard, you can find a way. And like Desmond said, we have to seek out ways to make sure our voices are heard. And the number one thing is to vote, to vote in November. Okay, so we can't close it out without me at least asking you how you have become the best version of yourself, or if you feel like you aren't the best version of yourself right now, what are you doing to get there?
I am definitely not the best version of myself. I it's hard to answer that question a little bit because I feel like your personality has several like different like factors to it, right? Like imagine like a giant board and there's like 10 different bubbles on it and each bubble's like a part of your personality. I feel like certain bubbles have gotten bigger over the years and other bubbles have gotten smaller. And right now I'm trying to like recognize how to find that balance, trying to like find a way to like kind of like make every part of my life be a little more just like what I want it to be. So like I found a way to like further my passions and things that I care about, but like, like maybe like my career isn't doing as well right now. Or maybe I finally got in a good relationship, but like now some stuff with like my family isn't going as well as I wanted to. So I think the thing that I'm trying to like be more like focused on right now is just trying to be authentic to myself every day.
Yes,
I think that's something that like I spent years trying to fight where I felt like I was doing things because I felt like I needed to do them for one reason or another. Like I needed to go out and get this product, or I needed to go and do this job, or I needed to go do this. And like I was making decisions based on what I thought I should do versus what I felt like I needed to do for me. And I think it makes me feel a certain way that it took me this long to figure that out, but I'm just glad that I'm finally there now where I'm just like I'm making decisions based on what I feel that I need, and I'm trying not to care as much about what other people think, because like I just I'm finally getting to the point where I have like a comfortable amount of I just do not care what you think anymore,
that's the way to be. That's the way to
Yeah,
be.
I just don't care. Like, let me just go live my life. And I'm getting there now. And I feel like I'm finally getting towards a balance. We're not there yet, but definitely working in that circle right now. Just, I think if I were to give some inspiration or some like words of wisdom to anybody else, it's just like the thing that someone said to me recently that I've really taken to heart is I was talking to a friend about wanting to get a new job, right? And he talked to me and he was like, just go and do whatever someone wouldn't have to force you to do.
Big fat. Can you say that one more
Mhm.
time?
Go out and do whatever someone would not have to force you to do.
Yes.
And that it hit me like a pound of bricks
Hit me.
when he said that. I was like, do whatever um do whatever you would never have to be forced to do. And yeah, that was a really big deal for me. I mean, I'm sorry, I had somebody walk into my room there for a second, kind of messed me all up. But
It's okay.
yeah, I felt like, for the longest time, like that's something that was just missing in my life. Just like permission, I guess I was giving myself to finally just like live the life that I wanted to live, you know, and not really worrying about the rest. And I feel like things have gotten better since I've kind of embraced that a little bit more.
Do you feel like they came with age or just life experiences?
Life experiences. I mean, I don't think age matters as much because I feel like, like I hate to say it, but there are certain people I know in my life who are in their 50s and they're still acting like people that I know who are like 18, 19, 20, like still like talking about like how they got drunk last night and how they like, like doing something stupid and just like or still having like the same old like relationship issues. And I'm like, I'm not knocking people who have relationship issues. I think there's like certain issues that you can tell are like come from a place of like immaturity, you know what I'm saying? Versus like, like real issues, you know? And I just feel like wanting to grow and be a better person, like some of that is circumstance and some of that is choice. And like you can't do anything about your circumstances. Like those are just the cards you got dealt. But like if there are things in your life that you can choose to do to make yourself better and you're choosing not to do them, like the question you need to ask yourself is why? Like why? Like why are you choosing to let these things continue when you have the ability to change them? Like you can change that. Go change it.
And I agree. And listen, one thing that you said about you hate, or kind of, you said that you were kind of upset or whatever with you just finding it out maybe later in life. And what I try to tell myself, as you know, I'm back in school now at 37. And so what I tell myself is to not try to compare my life to the next person's life, because you're doing what you're supposed to do when you're supposed to do it, and they're doing what they were supposed to do when they were supposed to do it. Society puts these pressures on us and makes us think that you're supposed to get married at this time, you're supposed to have a baby. If you're a woman, you're supposed to have a baby, you're supposed to do this and that. And so I'm not the traditional college age, but yet I'm in college. And yet I had to tell myself, I used to sometimes would be afraid for someone to even ask me how old I was. And so because I wanted to just fit in and like look like the other people that are the traditional age. But what I had to tell myself, and I've been telling myself over the past couple of weeks, is I'm doing exactly what I'm supposed to do when I was supposed to do it. Back then, if I would be in college and sitting in the classroom, my mind was not focused on that. Like I wouldn't be the best teacher. I wouldn't be the best version of myself if I knew back then that the issues that I was dealing with, and if I would have tried to go in the classroom and teach anyone's kids, I wouldn't have been the best version of myself. So Desmond, so like you're exactly where you need to be when you need to be. It. The lessons that you learn will make you be an even better person. And so I appreciate you for sharing that. And so I have truly enjoyed this conversation. And so I want to provide the listeners an opportunity to keep in contact with you. So can you tell them a little bit more about the Independent Thought podcast, and maybe give them a snippet of some of the episodes and the things that they'll hear if they go on over and listen to you, and how can they follow you?
Right. Yeah. So I mean, like, probably the best way to keep up with me right now, I am trying to be a little more consistent about posting on social media, but I would say on Instagram, just at Independent Thought. I've been trying to post things more on my stories on there, posted more previous videos on there. Like right now, I'm kind of like working backwards from old episodes that I have done and kind of like bringing it more to the current right now, but. I'm about 30 episodes into the Independent Thought. I'm on all the major platforms, most notably, like Apple Podcasts and Spotify. If you're one of those people who has like Stitcher or um, Overcast, Radio Public, I'm on some of those like as well. As of right now with the podcast, it's like we're taking a different direction right now. I was exclusively talking about politics before, but now I'm also trying to like focus a little bit more on like kind of like the life aspect of the podcast. So I'm bringing on different people, having them talk about like what's going on in their lives, and then I try to always like bring it back to politics. So like introducing people to other people, like see what these people are doing with their lives and how are they talking about politics. Because I think the one thing that I'm trying to like emphasize right now when I have all these different guests come on is that like everyone has an opinion about what's going on in the world, and I don't think that people should feel intimidated to talk about these things, because I feel like too many people feel like they can't talk about politics because they're not a quote unquote expert. And I feel like that is a mistake that we are all making. We don't need to be experts. Politics affects us all. We all have an opinion about it, and we should all feel comfortable talking about it with each other. That old like idea that you don't talk about religion or politics, that needs to go in the back seat where it belongs. It does not apply anymore. We need to stop acting as though these things are too taboo to talk about. That's what my show is about, shedding light on the things that need to be shed light on. If you want to join me, my name is Desmond Price. The podcast is called Independent Thought, and soon I will have a YouTube channel that you can check out as well.
Now, Desmond. Now, what you said? You said that you were impressed with my, like, that was awesome. Like, you just sold yourself, and I feel like people will come over and listen to you because you're real. And like I told you, like I feel like the way your podcast is organized, and you want to put out good quality, and I appreciate you for doing that. And you talk about things that some people may be afraid to talk about, and I commend you for that. And so I will leave Desmond's information in the description, and I'll also, like I said, I was a guest on his podcast. I will leave the link for that because I want to push you all over to his podcast too, to join him. And can you leave us with a quote, Desmond? I always leave my listeners, so I know you kind of have like quotes and things. Do you have a quote you want to throw out there?
Oh yeah. Hold up. I got one. Hold up. Yes, I have one by, let's see here, like it's by Teddy Roosevelt. Okay. In the quote says, "In any situation, the best thing you can do is the right thing. The next best thing you can do is the wrong thing, and the worst thing you can do is nothing."
Wow. Thank you. And thank you for, like I said, thank you for being here. And you all know at the Nice to Meet You podcast, I can't leave you without quoting my favorite scripture, Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the thoughts that I think towards you, thoughts of peace and not of evil, to bring you to your expected end. We're going to make it to our expected end. All right. So go out there, continue to be amazing, continue to be a beautiful, and I will talk to you all next week. All right.